Welcome to African Stories by Asada the Cynic Driver's YouTube channel. Where are you watching from? A rainy night ride brings together Alfonso, a cynical rideshare driver, Tanya, a sharp-tongued but deep-down compassionate woman, and James, a quietly sympathetic man. As they pass several methadone clinics, their conversation dives into the raw realities of the drug epidemic. Tanya calls the clinic the Crackhead house, while James defends the people inside, arguing that addiction is more than just bad choices. Alfonso shares that his younger brother died from mixing methadone with fentanyl, fueling his skepticism. Over 25 minutes, they trade personal stories of loss, moments of grudging agreement, and biting disagreements. Before we dive into the story, we encourage you to rate the video and tell us in the comments below where you are watching from. Like, share, and subscribe so that you will be the first to be notified of our next video coming up. The rain had just stopped, and the street still glistened under the dim streetlights. Alfonso, the rideshare driver, leaned on the wheel, eyes half on the road, half on the glowing sign across the street. Wellness Treatment Center. He snorted quietly, shaking his head. From the back seat, a woman's voice cut the silence, sharp, sarcastic. "Hey, honey, that's the Crackhead house," she said, pointing to the building on the left. Her name was Tanya. She sat with one leg crossed over the other, chewing gum like she was keeping time to a song only she could hear. Beside her sat James, her friend, quieter, eyes scanning the street like he was taking in every detail. "It's a methadone clinic," he said softly, almost like he was correcting her, but not enough to start a fight. Alfonso gripped the wheel tighter. "You're both wrong and right. Place like that, it's a halfway house for hope. Problem is, most people never make it all the way." The air inside the car felt heavy. The clinic's neon glow flashed against the windows as they rolled past, each of them carrying a different picture in their head of what went on inside. Tanya scoffed. "Halfway house for hope? Please. They're just lining people up, giving them another drug so they don't shake to death. Then they pat themselves on the back like they saved a life." She popped her gum and looked out the window, watching a man in a hood pull his jacket tight as he stepped into the clinic. James turned his head toward her. "You ever talk to someone who's been through it? It's not as simple as just stopping. Your body screams for it. It's like drowning, and the only air you can get is poison." Alfonso let out a dry laugh. "Yeah, and the government figured out if they hand you their version of poison, you're not stealing TVs for the street stuff. That's the whole game. Keep you dependent, but in a controlled way." Tanya rolled her eyes, but didn't say anything. Outside, the clinic's door opened again. This time it was a girl who couldn't be older than 20. Hair messy, face pale. She clutched her paper bag like it was the only thing keeping her alive. James stared at her until the car turned the corner. "That's someone's kid," he murmured. Alfonso snorted at James's comment. "Yeah, and she's also someone's problem now. You think her parents are waiting by the phone hoping she comes home? Most of them gave up years ago. You don't sit up every night for a junkie, not forever." James turned sharply in his seat, eyes narrowing. "You don't know her story. You don't know what happened to her. Maybe she got hooked on pain pills after a surgery. Maybe some boyfriend slipped or something. You act like everyone's just looking to ruin their own life." Tanya chuckled, low and almost bitter. "Sweetheart, sometimes they are. Ever see someone take their first hit, no gun to their head? They want that high. I've seen it. I've had friends who swore they'd just try it, and next thing they're pawning their mom's jewelry." Alfonso gripped the steering wheel tighter. "That's what I'm saying. It's a choice at the start. People don't want to hear that. It's easier to paint them all as victims. Keeps the guilt off everyone else's shoulders." The car fell quiet for a second, except for the hum of the tires on wet asphalt. James leaned forward slightly. "So you're telling me you've never screwed up in your life? Never done something you knew was bad for you?" Alfonso smirked without looking at him. "Sure I have, but I learned. You touch the stove, you get burned, you don't touch it again. These people, they keep touching it and then cry when they get burned." Tanya nodded, half agreeing. "Exactly, but," she paused, chewing her gum harder, "once you're in, it's not like you can just learn your way out. It's in your bones. It's in your blood. Your body won't even let you sleep without it. I had a cousin who tried to quit cold turkey. 3 days in, he was curled up on the bathroom floor screaming for his mom, shaking so bad he couldn't hold water. He made it a week before he was back at his dealer's door. James turned toward her, surprised at the hint of compassion. So then why call it the Crackhead house? Tanya shrugged. Because that's what the street calls it, and sometimes you gotta laugh so you don't cry. Alfonso gave a small grunt of approval. James shook his head slowly. You call it what you want, but inside there are people fighting for their lives, people who've lost everything, jobs, families, even themselves, and still drag their bodies there because they don't want to die. Alfonso laughed under his breath. And yet half of them still die. You think methadone is a magic shield? It's a leash. Keeps them from running wild, but they're still chained. I've been driving long enough to see the same faces year after year, and then one day they vanish. Guess what? It's never because they graduated. Tanya flicked her eyes toward him in the rear view. You sound like you've seen a lot. Alfonso's jaw tightened. I have. My younger brother was one of them. Thought methadone would save him. It bought him 6 months, and one day he decided to mix it with fentanyl. They found him slumped over in his car outside a gas station. James looked down, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm sorry, man. Alfonso shrugged like it didn't matter, but his eyes stayed locked on the road a little too long. Tanya shifted in her seat, her earlier sharpness softening. I lost my best friend that way. We grew up together. She was clean for almost a year, going to those meetings, taking the stuff from the clinic. Then she ran into her ex. He convinced her she could handle just one night. Her mom found her in the bathroom the next morning, needle still in her arm. The car went quiet again, the hum of the tires mixing with the faint sound of rain starting up on the windshield. James exhaled heavily. That's the part people don't get. It's not just about willpower. It's about staying away from every person, every street, every smell that reminds you of the high. But you can't erase your own brain. The memories are in there forever. Alfonso grunted. Exactly. And that's why I don't buy the whole we can fix everyone crap. You can help some, maybe, but most, they're just one bad day from going right back. Tanya chewed her gum slower now, staring at the streaks of rain on the glass. James leaned back, shaking his head. So what's the alternative? Just let him die? Alfonso's voice stayed flat. Sometimes, yeah. Harsh as it sounds, you can't save someone who's running toward the fire. You can throw water at them all day, but if they want the heat, they'll find it. Tanya sighed. I hate to say it, but he's not wrong. I've watched families drain their savings, sell their houses, put themselves in debt trying to save someone who didn't even want saving. James looked between them. But what about the ones who do want saving? The ones who show up every day, who fight through the shakes and the sweats and the nightmares? Alfonso shrugged. Those are the rare ones, and even then it's a long shot. You can give them all the treatment, all the therapy, all the love in the world, but if one night they decide they missed that feeling, it's over. And no, you can't predict when that night will come. The wipers squeaked against the glass as the rain picked up. James stared out the window, watching the city blur past. You know what I think? I think the system screws people twice. First, when they let pain pills flood the streets. Second, when they pull the rug out and act shocked people turn to heroin. Alfonso smirked. You're not wrong there. Big Pharma made their billions, then left the mess for everyone else to clean up. Now we got methadone clinics on every other block like it's the new Starbucks. Tanya laughed bitterly. At least Starbucks won't kill you. Well, unless you count the sugar. James didn't smile. You joke, but this is life and death. People I went to high school with are dead. Not just a few, a lot. And the scary part? Half of them started with prescriptions from doctors. Alfonso nodded once, eyes on the road. It's an assembly line. You get hurt, they hand you pills. You get hooked, they hand you methadone. You overdose, they hand your mom a pamphlet on grief counseling. Tanya shifted in her seat, leaning forward a little. "So what's your big answer, driver? If methadone isn't the way, what is? Cold turkey for everyone?" Alfonso snorted. "Cold turkey kills too. I don't have an answer. Maybe there isn't one. Maybe some people just can't be saved." James shot him a look. "That's a dangerous way to think. If everyone believed that, nobody would bother trying." Alfonso shrugged. "Look around. Most people aren't trying. They're just checking boxes so they can say they did their part." Tanya chewed her gum slowly, thinking. "You know, I've seen people turn it around. Not many, but it happens. One of my neighbors, hooked for years. Now he's been clean 5. Got a job, sees his kids, mows his lawn every Saturday." Alfonso gave a skeptical grunt. "Good for him. But you're telling me if something went wrong, wife left him, job gone, he wouldn't think about it?" Tanya hesitated, then sighed. "Probably would." The rain came harder now, tapping against the roof. James spoke quietly. "We have to at least believe there's a way back. Otherwise, what's the point?" Alfonso glanced at him in the mirror. "The point is survival. Yours, not theirs. If trying to save them drags you down, you're just another body in the pile." Tanya looked at James. "He's not wrong there either. I've seen parents lose everything chasing after their kids' recovery. Some don't make it through." James's jaw tightened. "So we just cut them off?" Alfonso's voice was cold. "Sometimes that's the only thing left. You love someone, but you can't live their life for them. You can't detox for them. You can't stop the cravings for them. And if they decide they'd rather chase that high than breathe clean air, is nothing you can do." Tanya leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "God, that's depressing." Alfonso didn't respond. James tapped his knee, restless. "You know what's worse than watching someone go under? Watching them finally get clean and then lose them anyway. I had a buddy, 2 years sober, doing everything right. Then he gets hit by a drunk driver, gone in seconds. Made me wonder if all that fight was for nothing." Tanya nodded slowly. "That's the thing, right? Life doesn't care. You can claw your way out of hell and still get knocked flat." Alfonso gripped the wheel tighter. "And that's why I say, don't waste your whole life trying to drag someone out if they're not climbing with you. You'll both drown." James leaned forward. "But what if the only reason they're still here is because someone refused to give up on them?" Alfonso's eyes flicked to him in the mirror. "Then I hope that someone has the stomach for a long, bloody fight, because that's what it is, and most people can't handle it." Tanya blew a bubble and let it pop. "I used to think I could handle it. My ex, man, I put up with everything. Stole from me, lied to me, disappeared for days. I still let him come back. Thought love could fix it. Turns out love just makes you slower to see the truth." James tilted his head. "And what's the truth?" She stared at the passing streetlights. "That you can't love someone out of addiction. They've got to want out so bad they'd crawl through glass to get there. And most don't." Alfonso smirked faintly, spoken like someone who's been burned enough to know better. Tanya gave a humorless laugh. "More like someone who finally learned how to lock her door." James sat back, shaking his head. "You two sound like you've both given up." Alfonso didn't look away from the road. "Not given up, just stopped pretending." They passed another clinic, smaller, with a dim blue light over the entrance. A man stood outside smoking, his thin frame shivering under a hoodie. James pointed. "That guy could be me or you or anyone if life went sideways enough." Tanya raised her eyebrow. "Not me. I'm too stubborn to let anything own me like that." Alfonso chuckled darkly. "That's what everyone says until it happens. No one wakes up thinking, 'Today I'll start destroying my life.' It sneaks in. Pain pills for a back injury, a little extra to help you sleep. Next thing, you're selling your shoes for a hit." James nodded. "That's why judgment doesn't help. You can't shame someone into quitting." Tanya smirked. No, but sometimes shame keeps them from starting. Alfonso shook his head. If shame worked, the streets would be empty. The rain slowed to a drizzle, the sound soft against the roof. James spoke carefully. I think treatment works best when it's more than just the drug replacement. People need counseling, job training, community, something to come back to. Alfonso grunted. Sure, in a perfect world, but this isn't that world. Most clinics hand you a cup, watch you swallow, and send you out the door. No one's following you home to make sure you don't mix it with something else. Tanya shrugged. That's why some folks end up right back in the same mess. James glanced at her. And some don't. Some find that one reason to keep going. Alfonso sighed. Hope's a nice word, but it doesn't fill your veins when the craving hits at 3 a.m. They turned onto a quieter street where the glow of the city faded into dark houses and empty sidewalks. James broke the silence. You ever think about how many funerals this epidemic has caused? I've been to 6 in the last 2 years. 6, all under 40. James nodded grimly. I stopped counting. Makes you numb after a while. Alfonso's voice was low. My brother's was the worst. Closed casket. He looked like hell at the end. Skin gray, eyes sunk in. And I still hear people say, at least he's at peace now. Peace? There's no peace in that. Tanya swallowed hard. People say that because they don't know what else to say. James murmured. Sometimes silence is better. Alfonso's knuckles tightened on the wheel as he spoke. You know what nobody talks about? The families that stop showing up. Everyone wants to talk about overdoses, but no one wants to say they got tired of visiting the jail or the hospital. I don't blame them. There's only so many times you can cry over the same person before you run dry. Tanya nodded slowly. My aunt stopped visiting her son after his 3rd rehab, said she couldn't handle the hope anymore. Hope was killing her faster than his addiction was killing him. James frowned. That's rough, but I get it. It's like watching someone drowning and realizing they're the ones pulling you under. Alfonso grunted. Exactly. Sometimes walking away is the only way to save yourself. They passed a boarded-up store. A homeless man huddled in the doorway under a torn blanket, his thin fingers clutching a styrofoam cup. James stared. That could be the end for a lot of them, right? No family, no home, just the street until they disappear. Tanya crossed her arms. Some choose the street over getting clean. My cousin had a bed waiting at a rehab center, and he still picked the sidewalk, said he didn't want rules. Alfonso shook his head. Addiction is comfortable for them. Miserable, sure, but familiar. And familiar is easier than change. James turned to him. So you think they're all hopeless? Alfonso's voice was flat. Not all, just most. And no one knows which ones will make it until it's already too late. Tanya let out a bitter laugh. You sound like one of those old guys at the bar who's seen it all and just wants to watch the world burn. Alfonso smirked darkly. Maybe, or maybe I've just stopped lying to myself. James sighed. You call it lying. I call it believing in people. Without that, you might as well shut down every clinic and bury every addict now. Tanya glanced at him. Wouldn't be much of a world left if we did that. Alfonso's eyes stayed on the road. The world doesn't stop spinning just because people disappear. That's the truth nobody wants to admit. A police car sped past in the opposite lane. James followed it with his eyes. Bet you half the calls they get are overdose-related. Alfonso nodded. And the other half are theft, fights, or some other mess tied to feeding the habit. Tanya rolled her eyes. Yeah, because everyone hooked on drugs is a criminal, right? Alfonso gave her a look in the mirror. You tell me, stealing from your mom's purse isn't a crime? Tanya hesitated. It is, but it's not the same as mugging someone. Alfonso shrugged. Different scale, same root. James shook his head. I think that's oversimplifying it. Addiction's not just crime, it's sickness, it's trauma, it's bad luck. Alfonso chuckled darkly. And sometimes it's just bad choices. The rain stopped completely, leaving the streets wet and shining under the streetlights. Tanya leaned her head back. You ever wonder if maybe the reason people hate addicts so much is because they see themselves in them? Like, deep down, they know they're one bad decision away from falling too. James thought for a moment. Maybe. Fear and shame are powerful. Easier to point fingers than to admit how close you are to the edge. Alfonso's lips curled into a half smile. People don't like looking in the mirror if it shows them something ugly. Tanya tapped her gum against her teeth. Guess that makes addict the mirror no one wants to face. James nodded. Yeah, maybe that's why we need to face it. The car slowed for a red light. A group of people waited at a bus stop, one of them nodding off, head dipping forward and jerking back up. Tanya pointed. See that? That's what the clinic's methadone can't fix. They take their dose, then chase the high anyway. James frowned. Or maybe that's someone who didn't make it there today. Miss a dose and your body goes crazy. Alfonso sighed. And that's the problem. Their lives revolve around not being sick, not around living. Everything's about avoiding the crash. Tanya's voice softened, almost against her will. That's no way to live. Alfonso looked her in the mirror. No, it's not. But some never get past it. The light turned green. James asked, what about programs that pair methadone with counseling, job placement, all that? I've heard they have better results. Alfonso chuckled. Results? You mean the 10% that make it? Those numbers look great in a grant proposal, but they don't change the street. Tanya tilted her head. So what, we just let the other 90% rot? Alfonso's jaw tightened. I didn't say that, but we need to stop pretending they'll all be fine if we throw enough resources at them. James muttered, That's a dark way to live. Alfonso replied, It's the only way I've learned to survive in a city full of graves. They drove past a mural of faces, young and old, painted with flowers and candles beneath them. Tanya stared. Memorial wall? Alfonso nodded. Overdose victims. They repaint it every year. Always have to make room for new faces. James's voice dropped. That's heavy. Alfonso's tone was blunt. It's reality. Most people drive by without looking twice. They don't want to feel anything. Tanya chewed slowly. Maybe that's why people like me make jokes about the Crackhead house. It's easier to laugh than think about that wall. James glanced at her. And maybe that's why I hate those jokes. Tanya met his eyes, unflinching. We all cope different. A siren wailed in the distance. James said, Probably another overdose. Alfonso nodded. Every siren tasks midnight, that's what I think. And I'm right more often than not. Tanya's voice was quiet now. I hate that you're probably right. James leaned forward. And yet, here we are arguing in a warm car while someone's fighting for their life a few blocks away. Alfonso looked at him in the mirror. And tomorrow night, it'll be someone else. That's the cycle. Tanya turned to James. And maybe that's why he's cynical. You can't watch the same movie every night without knowing how it ends. They pulled up near another clinic, smaller and dimly lit. A line of people stood outside, hoods up, hands in pockets. James stared. That's the morning line, but at night. Alfonso smirked. Night doses. Keeps the peace for a few hours. Tanya frowned. Looks like a soup kitchen line. Alfonso said, In a way it is. They're feeding a hunger, just not the kind you cure with bread. James muttered, It's still keeping them alive. Alfonso replied, Alive and barely breathing are two different things. James asked, So if you were in charge, what would you do? Alfonso laughed without humor. I'd focus on the ones who've already shown they want out. Stop wasting resources on people who aren't ready. Tanya tilted her head. That's cold. Alfonso replied, It's practical. If you've only got one life raft, you can't save everyone drowning. You save the ones paddling toward you, not the ones swimming back to the storm. James frowned. But what if the ones swimming back are just scared? What if they change their mind if you held on a little longer? Alfonso shrugged. Then maybe someone else will hold on. I can't. The street lights grew sparser as they entered a quieter part of the city. Tanya said, "You know, I've never tried anything stronger than weed, but I've seen enough to know it could have been me if life had gone a little different." James nodded. "Same. Lost a job, got depressed, started drinking more than I should. That slope isn't that far from here as people think." Alfonso grunted. "And that's the part folks don't want to admit. You're one bad break from ending up in that clinic line. No one's immune." Tanya smirked. "Guess that makes you a little more like them than you'd like to admit, huh?" Alfonso gave a half smile. "Maybe, but I'm not in the line yet." James said, "Not yet. But if something happened, say you lost your job, your health, what would stop you?" Alfonso's voice was firm, stubbornness, and the fact that I watched it kill my brother. Once you've seen the ending, you don't want the first chapter. Tanya said, "But isn't that what everyone says before they fall?" Alfonso chuckled. "Maybe, but I'd rather die fighting to stay out than sink without swinging." James shook his head. "You talk like it's a war." Alfonso replied, "It is, and most people lose." They stopped at another light. Tanya noticed a small memorial, candles, a photo, flowers, under a lamppost. "Another one?" Alfonso nodded. "Kid overdosed right there last month. 17. Didn't even make it to the clinic." James whispered, 17? Tanya muttered, "That's not even living yet." Alfonso's tone was flat. "Addicts don't care about age. I've seen 12-year-olds in those lines." James's eyes widened. 12? Alfonso nodded again. "World's ugly when you actually look at it." James ran a hand over his face. "So you've seen the worst, but have you seen the best? People who really made it?" Alfonso thought for a moment. "A few. One guy from my brother's group, clean 7 years now. Runs his own business, but he moved across the country, said he couldn't stay here and stay alive." Tanya said, "So the secret is leaving?" Alfonso replied, "Sometimes you can't heal in the place that broke you." James murmured, "That's true for more than just addiction." They rolled past rows of dark houses. James asked, "So what do you think happens to the ones who don't make it?" Alfonso kept his eyes on the road. "Nothing happens. They just stop. No big lesson, no grand ending. They're here one day, gone the next, and the world keeps turning." Tanya stared out the window. "That's cold." Alfonso shrugged. "That's life." James said, "I think people live on in the ones they touched." Alfonso smirked. "Sure, until those people die too. Then nobody remembers." Tanya sighed. "You really know how to kill a mood." They stopped at a crosswalk. A woman pushed a shopping cart full of bags across the street, her eyes darting nervously. James whispered, "Think she's using?" Alfonso said, "I don't have to think, I know." Tanya looked closer. "She looks scared." Alfonso shook his head. "That's the look of someone thinking about their next fix. Fear's part of it, but so is hunger." James muttered, "I wish I could believe it was just fear." Tanya leaned back. "Either way, it's not the life anyone dreams of." James asked, "What would you tell someone thinking about trying drugs for the first time?" Alfonso didn't hesitate. "Don't. That's it. Don't. One hit can be the start of a lifetime prison you can't see." Tanya added, "I'd tell them to go sit in a clinic waiting room for an hour. See the bodies, hear the coughs, smell the sweat. If they still want to try after that, they're already lost." James nodded. "I'd tell them about the funerals, the empty chairs at Thanksgiving." Alfonso said, "And none of it will matter to someone chasing a high. But maybe it'll get through to one." They passed a park. A figure lay on a bench under a soaked blanket. James said, "That could be someone's brother." Alfonso replied, "Could be, or someone's son, father." Friend. Doesn't matter to the world, though. Tanya frowned. Matters to someone. Alfonso glanced at her. Until it doesn't, people's hearts wear out. James shook his head. Yours sounds worn out. Alfonso's jaw tightened. Maybe it is. The silence in the car stretched until Tanya spoke. Ever think maybe you're this cynical because it's easier than caring? Alfonso's eyes flicked to her in the mirror. Caring didn't save my brother. James leaned forward. But did not caring make losing him hurt less? Alfonso didn't answer right away. No, but it made living after easier. Tanya looked away. I don't know if that's living. They passed another boarded building with graffiti reading, "No future here." James pointed. That's the message a lot of addicts see every day. No future. Alfonso nodded. And sometimes they believe it. Tanya said, if you're told you're trash long enough, you start acting like it. James replied, which is why we need more people telling them they're worth saving. Alfonso chuckled without humor. Maybe. Or maybe we need to be honest about how hard it'll be. Tanya shifted in her seat. I think the problem is people want a neat success story. They don't want the messy truth. Alfonso smirked. The truth doesn't sell. Success does. No one's making movies about the 90% who didn't make it. James said, but the 10% matters. Even one matters. Alfonso replied, tell that to the families burying the other 9. Tanya muttered, you're exhausting. The car turned down a busier street. Bright lights from bars spilled onto the sidewalk. A man stumbled out of one, nearly tripping. James said, alcohol's a drug too, but no one talks about shutting all this down. Alfonso laughed. Because it's legal and taxable. That's the difference. Doesn't matter if it kills people the same way. Tanya said, so it's not about health, it's money. Alfonso nodded. Always has been. James sighed. Feels like everything's stacked against getting better. Alfonso said, it is, which is why the ones who make it are rare. Tanya asked, so why even try? Alfonso replied, because not trying means certain death. Trying at least gives you a shot. James nodded, and that's the part I hold on to. Alfonso said, hold on to it all you want, just don't let it blind you. They passed a small church with its doors open, light spilling out. A few people stood smoking outside. James said, some churches run recovery programs. Alfonso nodded. Some do good work. Some just preach until you feel guilty enough to come back sober for a week. Tanya said, better than nothing. Alfonso replied, sometimes nothing's better than false hope. Tanya leaned forward. So, cynical driver, what would you tell a mom with a kid in that clinic line? Alfonso paused. I'd tell her to set her boundaries now. Love them, but don't let them take her down, too. James said, that's harsh advice for a mom. Alfonso replied, harsh keeps you alive. Tanya asked, and if it was your kid? Alfonso stared ahead. I'd try, but I wouldn't sync with them. They drove in silence for a while. The city thinned, streetlights farther apart. James finally said, I still think hope's worth the risk. Alfonso smirked. And I think hope's a coin toss, and the house always wins. Tanya shook her head. Maybe you're both right. Maybe it's a gamble, but sometimes you have to play. Alfonso said, and sometimes you walk away from the table before you lose everything. A neon 24-hour clinic sign came into view ahead. People lingered outside, some pacing, others sitting on the curb. Tanya sighed. Another crackhead house. James gave her a sharp look. She added quickly, yeah, I know, methadone clinic, but still. Alfonso said, call it what you want. Inside, it's the same battle every day. James murmured, and some will win tonight. Alfonso replied, and most won't. They stopped at a light near the clinic. A young man stepped out, holding a small cup, head down. Tanya watched him cross the street. Wonder what his story is. Alfonso said, Doesn't matter. Could be tragedy, could be boredom, could be greed. All roads led him here. James said, And maybe one will lead him out. Alfonso shook his head. Odds aren't great, Tanya said. Still better than zero. The light turned green, and they rolled on. The clinic faded in the mirrors, swallowed by the night. James leaned back. I just hope someday we're not having the same talk. Alfonso replied, We will. Different faces, same story. Tanya stared out the window. Maybe so, but I'll still keep looking for the ones who make it. Alfonso gave a small, almost invisible nod. Yeah, me too. Just don't expect me to smile while I do it. The car moved deeper into the dark streets, their words hanging in the air. Part truth, part hope, part surrender. Moral lessons. Addiction is complex. It is not purely a matter of choice or weakness, but often a tangled mix of pain, trauma, and environment. Hope must be balanced with boundaries. Loving someone with addiction requires limits to avoid self-destruction. Not everyone can be saved. Resources should be used where they have the best chance of success, but without giving up on those still fighting. Shame and judgment don't heal. They may even push people deeper into their struggle. Environment matters. Recovery is harder when surrounded by triggers and old habits. Every survivor matters. Even if the odds are low, every life saved is worth the effort. Thanks for watching. Please leave comments, like, share, and subscribe so that you will be the first to be notified our next video coming up.